Everybody asks me to do it. I have had so many people saying, would you run as an independent? Would you run as a third-party candidate? And I think, they see the kind of votes. I'd get a lot of votes. The best way of defeating the Democrats, and probably Hillary, I think it's going to be Hillary, is to run as a Republican. If I do the third-party thing, it would be, I think, very bad for the Republicans. I think it would be very bad in terms of beating the Democrats, and we have to win.
The third-party thing, Donald Trump in an interview with CNN recently weighing the possibility of doing just that. Joining me right now is senior political analyst for the Washington Examiner, Michael Barone, to discuss this topic. Great to see you, Michael.
Hey, nice to be with you.
All right, now in your new column, you say that Trump has not definitively ruled out a third-party run. That assumes, though, he would lose the GOP primary. We know he's polling very well right now. At what point do you start to see his star fading?
Well, he's polling very well. He's getting 16% in one poll, and the next candidate gets 12%. Those are pretty low numbers. There's a margin of error on those numbers. He's obviously getting some recognition, but there are other polls that say most Republican voters would reject him. I don't think that Trump is going to win the Republican nomination. I don't think there's any chance of that at all. And in my Washington Examiner column, I just speculated on what are the possible effects, tried to comprehend what might happen should Trump run as a third-party candidate. I mean, he's got the potential to do that. He can self-finance to a considerable extent, and he begins with the sort of celebrity that third-party candidate Ross Perot had in 1992 and that Colin Powell could have had in 1995-96 had he chosen to run as a third-party candidate.
Now, you also talk, and Trump mentioned this, about how it could also upset the balance of power on the Democratic side of things because of the reemergence of populism in American politics. You think he could steal some voters away from Hillary, too?
Well, what I did in my Washington Examiner column was to take a look at the historic record here of what's gone on when you've had third-party candidates. And what they do is destabilize what seems to be very permanent party coalitions. They change the alignment of parties, not always in the way that they probably intended. The populist movement of the 1890s that was for inflationary free silver and more aid to farmers, they basically changed the party coalitions, but the winners out of that, 1896, were the Republicans, the pro-gold standard, pro-business William McKinley, and the Republicans won most elections for the next 3 decades. When you look at Strom Thurmond, he was detaching the states' rights Democrats, white Southerners, from the Democratic Party in 1948. That was the beginning of a long process of white Southerners moving from the Democratic to the Republican Party. That wasn't necessarily what he intended. He didn't prevent Democratic victories of Harry Truman and John Kennedy in the short term, so he didn't get the results he wanted. And Ross Perot in 1992. Perot said, we're going to get above all the partisan battles. Right. We're going to settle things with simple issues. Well, what happened there is that he transformed the previous political situation, where the Republicans had a lock on the presidency, the Democrats had a lock on Congress or the House of Representatives. And instead, the Democrats have become, by a smaller margin, the dominant party in presidential elections. But in response, the Republicans have won 9 of the next 11 House of Representative elections, winning majorities in the House each time. And so what we've had is partisan gridlock.
Right. Well, I think the popularity of Trump, at least right now, speaks to that frustration of the American people with the partisan gridlock. We'll see if it lasts. Michael Barone, you can catch him on the Washington Examiner. Thanks so much for being with us here today.
Thank you.